Alrighty, so hello everyone. Thanks for being here and for the opportunity to let me preach about UEFN. One thing I wanted to quickly mention, if at any moment during the presentation my audio cuts off or there's lag, just do a little soundboard on Discord just to let me know, just so I don't keep rambling with everything broken. So some quick information about me. I've been building games for more than 10 years, and I've been using Unreal Engine since the UDK days. So that's kind of why I transitioned to UEFN. Kind of made sense since I played with pretty much everything from Unreal for the past 10 years or so. So let's begin. Right. My UEFN intro. So I never used Fortnite Creative before UEFN, but once UEFN came out, I decided to try it out when it released. Mostly for verse. I kind of like the whole verse thing and what they're doing with the new programming language. So the idea of using Unreal Engine to create Fortnite games sounded pretty cool, and it kind of brought me back to the UDK days. And my wife at that time, she wanted to jump into Unreal Engine to make visual novels. So I told her Unreal 5 is a little bit complex. How about you try UEFN and like get into game development, but with a little bit less friction? And she started making cool stuff, which surprised me. And we eventually ended up working together on projects. She focuses more on the design related things, such as level design, narrative design, game design. She does mostly like a high level overview of the puzzles or gameplay in our game, and then I jump in and do all the technical stuff. And she also does the thumbnails, and then I come in and do director role related things like giving her guidance, direction, and how to iterate better on that. The big important question: why should Unreal developers care about UEFN? At least for me, it's a test bed for Unreal Engine 6, which mostly comes with verse and scene graph. That's what they said. And UEFN is usually a version above UE5 release. So for example, UE5 right now, I think it's 5.5, UEFN is 5.6. And people ask, why do this? Like, why are they doing verse? Why are they doing scene graph? And it will eventually make sense once you fully understand the plans behind them, because verse is kind of weird compared to other programming languages. So once you jump in and you start playing around and then you read what they said about the tools, everything is going to click. It's literally Unreal Engine with most of the complexities removed. So you don't have blueprints on at least the event graph. You can't write code on blueprints. You don't have code on animation blueprints, and other things as well kind of are not available. So this allows developers to focus more on the game itself than the technical aspects. So you kind of just have bare bones engine stuff, and then you mostly use verse and the devices to kind of write logic and build the game. A big point of contention I see with traditional developers when they look at UEFN is that this is a Fortnite, ew. And just that perception by itself, even on the player side, doesn't let them move forward with the tools and the ecosystem. But once you get over that, it will click and you will see the potential of the ecosystem. As you can see on the picture here, on the left side, you have just a standard one of our Unreal games, but kind of like the standard Fortnite stuff. And then on the right side, we have the horror game. It's essentially the same thing, but you can see the vibes completely shifted within the same tool. One of the things I love the most about the tools and the ecosystem is being able to explore new ideas and game concepts that would have taken a lot more time to develop from scratch in UE5. And you can even port UE5 projects to UEFN. So you already have a fully built game with distribution handled. So you don't need to worry about, at least for me, most of the games that I worked on in UE5 have been multiplayer games. So for once, not having to worry about dealing with network code and just focus entirely on the game itself, it's it's pretty cool. Like working on an MMO on multiplayer games with big player counts, and then coming here and then you have all that already handled. Like there's no there everything. Most of the complexities are abstracted away, so you don't have to deal with that. Another great point is that source control. You have source control. I'm not sure what they use behind the scenes. Maybe some perforce or some custom system, but every single project has fully built source control. You don't have to pay. It's free. And it's already integrated into the editor. It's pretty much the same as Unreal 5 with some changes. So for example, you can see you have a snapshot history. You can revert back to different change lists. You have the standard submit files. It already comes included with I think it's one file per actor or something like that. I probably said that wrongly, but whenever you move things on the outline, on the world, everything, like you're not checking out the entire level. You're just checking out that specific asset. So pretty much a bunch of developers can work on the same level without causing conflicts between each other. I mean, if they touch the same asset, yeah, the editor will complain and will let you know, and it will give you like a color. It will change the color of the assets in the world depending if they're checked out or if you haven't checked out. So that's really cool. Like you don't need to worry about perforce or having to deal with Jenkins. And obviously, if you play your cards right, you can make a lot of money. That's the analytics from our horror game Kagami. And it's crazy since since you can get paid monthly depending if your payments are above $100. So let's say you build a few games and they all become viral and they stay on the ecosystem and they kind of rotate between, let's say, 100 to 500 players, and then all of a sudden, boom, it blows up to 1,000 players and just keeps going between the ecosystem. That's already there. You don't have to do anything. It's going to keep making money as long as people keep playing it. And finally, it's really fun and a breath of fresh air, especially if you've been doing a lot of technical work for years in Unreal Engine. Like I mentioned before, not having to deal with networking or building complex gameplay frameworks before you actually get to work on the game itself, it's relaxing. Like I don't have to, okay, let's build a gameplay ability framework to then start working on the abilities or just the game itself. No, you simply jump in. Obviously, you can build complex stuff, which is kind of what I do, but on a very light level. But on a like the bare bones, you can jump in and start putting devices and whipping up gameplay stuff very quickly. So what's from going to prototyping to shipping games in UEFN? Now, before we start, I wanted to show you guys a small compilation of some of the games that we've been working on. Let's go. all those games has been between 3 to 4 months. Some of them have shipped, others are still in development. But we've been exploring multiple genres at the same time, mostly exploring what's trendy or what we want to make. And the tools just lets us jump in and build all these different games without having to, okay, so we're building kind of like this boss battle game and then we're doing a horror game, and then like imagine building that in Unreal from scratch. Like you could probably do it, but it's going to be a lot of blue-green spaghetti or just copying another framework that you used before. Uh, So let's see. Once we started working on UEFN, we mostly focused on simple experiences to see how the tools and the ecosystem worked. Because at first we had no idea what to do initially. There's just so many things you can jump in and do. And like, what do we want to do? Do we want to make a shooter? Do we want to make a like a RPG type game, a death run, or like there's so many things you could do. So let's just pick a few different popular game modes and let's build something extremely quickly with them, just to publish them, see how it feels, and then read the analytics after and like start iterating through the whole system and see how it feels pretty much. In comparison with Roblox, this ecosystem already has a base experience with the players. Like if you think of Roblox, you don't have a base experience with Roblox. It's kind of like a platform that you build games. But with Fortnite, you already had a game for years before all these UGC stuff became something. So the closer you stick to Fortnite, the more competition you'll have and the less chance you'll get for Discovery to notice you, because pretty much everyone else is doing the same thing. Like you can see on the screenshot, like some trend pops up and then you have a bunch of people just following the same trend. And it becomes really hard to get noticed when you have a lot of competition to like go up against. So the further that you go from Fortnite, they call it innovation, the riskier, but you might capitalize on a market not served, or you might start a new trend, which is what we did with Kigami. Not the trend, but kind of like explore something different. It's really cool, but really risky at the same time, because I've seen multiple high quality projects with unique gameplay, but they fail to find an audience. And this frequently happens with traditional developers that don't understand the ecosystem that well. I've seen so many cool games. You've probably seen them on Twitter or any social media. It looks really good, entirely custom graphics, like a very awesome experience. But then you look at the analytics on Fortnite.gg and you notice that they barely hit 100 players. So it's kind of like a seesaw. Like, okay, do we stick with Fortnite or do we build something unique and see what happens? With Kigami, we decided to make an experiment. Let's make the scariest and challenging non-Fortnite game possible with zero Fortnite assets and entirely custom mechanics to see what happens when you make something on the other side of the spectrum. At this game, when you play it, pretty much every person that has played it and gave us feedback, they say the same thing. Like, wow, this is Fortnite. Like, this is entirely different from the other horror games. And it's a slow burn horror game inspired by PlayStation 2 horror games such as Silent Hill and Siren. It's like, okay, I want to do a horror game, but let's just build something extremely like niche and weird and challenging and extremely scary on a platform that is mostly for kids and like shooting type experiences. And let's see what happens. And yeah, it went pretty well. Surprisingly, the game got picked up by Discovery almost instantly and it went viral. While the CCU wasn't as high as other Fortnite friendly games, like we didn't reach we did reach top one on horror, but it's not something that gets thousands of players constantly. Like right now, it's around 90 players. It goes down to 50, and then it gets picked up by the algorithm and blows up again. But it's it worked. And it confirmed that there's a market for these types of experiences on the ecosystem. Maybe it's the horror genre. Maybe it's like players actually want something different compared to what they get from the regular Fortnite stuff. But there's a market, and it kind of shifted our focus to similar experiences because we love making them, we love playing them, and the players enjoy them. Although we have multiple other projects, but for now, just to kind of keep the train going, we're going to be mostly focused on horror, unique horror experiences. And for the following games, we're going to be tweaking our formula a little bit more to make them more ecosystem friendly, mostly streamlining the gameplay and reducing pain points, but still staying true to our style, even if it doesn't have mass appeal. For example, in Kigami, the game it throws you into the world with just maybe a minute of exposition, story exposition, and that's it. And then all the objectives, there's no objective markers. You simply have to read a little bit and kind of figure out the clues with environmental like cues, pretty much. So all the puzzles, everything, it's like you got to figure it out, kind of following the siren ethos that they developed the way in a very cryptic manner that forced players to go into the forums of the old days and kind of like mention their things and like try to figure out how to complete the puzzles. And we tried that in Kigami, and it worked because there's a lot of videos of people giving tutorials and a lot of conversations on the comments of those videos saying, "Where's the last spirit lamp? What's the puzzle for the piano?" And then people having conversations, and that kind of creates virality. It creates traction around the game. But we're gonna make them a little bit more approachable moving forward just so we can kind of keep players engaged and not have a big drop off because players simply don't have the time for that. Now let's get into the tips and tricks. I'll show you a few things I've learned in my journey with UEFN. This is probably one of the most important things is that what developers consider high quality, it's entirely different for the players. And I probably paraphrased this wrongly, but it was one of the most important insights I learned from Epic in a live stream, and one of the biggest points of contention with developers. So you're building something, you're spending months on it, and you're thinking, "Wow, this is so cool! It has an awesome framework. It has custom graphics. It has something that no other Fortnite game has." And then you push it, and boom, it dies out. Like nobody plays it. And what you consider to be high quality, the players on the player side is completely different. And like I mentioned before, this happens a lot with standard developers. And then you're probably pissed off because you pushed this game and nobody played it, and then you see some 16-year-old kid and he makes an experience in a few days, and then he starts making over $10,000 monthly. Like, well, why is that? Like, it's a completely copy pasted thing. But like I said, it's the quality thing, it's entirely different. And trying to figure a medium point between what you consider high quality and what the players actually want, what the market wants, it's challenging, and I'm still trying to figure that out. One of the most important tools at your disposal is Fortnite.gg. It's essentially an analytics website for Fortnite. I mean, there's a lot of things I haven't used. I use it mostly for creative, but this shows you all the stats that you need to fully understand how the algorithm works, what thumbnails are actually popular, like which one has higher conversion rates. You can find trends, and essentially you consume all this analytic content to find patterns that you can use for your upcoming games, or maybe you find something that you start noticing a trend occurring and you can attack it quickly and jump first on that. Because another thing that I learned is that usually the first games that set the standard or start the trends are the ones that players come back to. So one of the previous images I showed with all the copy pasted thumbnails and game experiences, all of them are pretty much just copy pasted things. But the first one that does it is the one that has the most players kind of involved in the cycle. The others, yes, they get a little bit of the market, but it's not as the first one. So if you can jump into this and pick and like find the patterns and attack quickly, you can capitalize on the trends and the markets very quickly. If you want your projects to get prioritized on the discovery queue, so whenever you push a game out, you get added into a queue that discovery, like their algorithm that places games in the tabs and all that. There's like a queue that every game goes through, and Epic says that it assures you that every single game is going to get at least 50K impressions or something like that. So I noticed that if your game has a lot of verse code and has a lot of custom devices, it goes up on the queue. I might be right, I might be wrong, but I noticed this with multiple projects, especially Kagami. When we push Kagami in probably an hour or less, you can actually see this on Fortnite.gg. It got into discovery extremely quickly and it stayed there compared to other projects that I had to wait maybe a week to get into discovery. So if you're taking your project seriously, make sure you put a lot more work into verse instead of just relying on the pre-built devices that Fortnite gives you. And this is extremely important and probably one of the best things for Unreal developers, especially those with huge marketplace vaults like myself. I've been collecting asset packs since the marketplace went live during the early days of UE4. I have a huge stash of thousands of dollars worth of assets. So one trick is that you can open Unreal Engine 5 and then open UEFN. And then on the Unreal 5, you can go into Fab and then look at your library and import things that you want to use on your Fortnite project. So you import it into the UE5 project because a lot of assets are not going to show up on the UEFN Fab tab, probably because they have to be marked as UEFN supported in order to use them in UEFN. So what you do is you open Unreal 5, you open Fab there, you import the assets into the Unreal 5 project, then you right-click the root folder, and then you migrate that to UEFN, and boom, you have all the assets in UEFN ready to use. But a big caveat with this is that if there's a lot of blueprints, animation blueprints, I think like map build data, and I think grooms or other types of assets, they're not supported by UEFN and they're going to throw errors. And if you import something with a lot of complex BP code, the serialized data in that might cause the thing to simply just not work, and it's not going to give you like a way to fix it instantly with the validator. So preferably for those types of assets, avoid blueprints and just build the blueprints inside of a UEFN. And if you want to really throw in a blueprint that has a lot of like cool components already mixed in, mostly just pre-built stuff from Unreal, make sure you remove all the code from the blueprint before you move it into UEFN. That way the validator is not going to throw errors. So Kagami was entirely built with this set of assets that you see on the screen. All of them are from the marketplace or somewhere else. I just put them all into the project and make sure to do a bulk operation on the texture sizes. You want to make sure that the texture sizes are less than 4K and preferably 1K to 2K size. For Kagami, I trimmed everything down to 1K because we simply had too many assets, especially the foliage. So I had to trim a lot of the texture sizes and also remove PBR support for certain materials. But you want to make sure that you kind of do a pass on all these assets, textures, Meshes, especially meshes, if they have a lot of vertices and triangles, make sure you decimate those before you bring them into UEFN, because you have only 400 megabytes of project size, which sounds like a bit too much, maybe, at least for a Fortnite thing, but you're gonna run out of memory very quickly with that. So you want to make sure you stay with the memories and meshes, stay like the lowest that you can possible, kind of like optimizing them for, let's say, PS4 or Xbox 360. That way you can also get improved performance whenever other players from consoles play the game. If I could give you one UEFN game development tip, it would be to reduce the friction as much as possible and design your games around maximizing playtime and engagement. Those 60, the first 60 seconds of the game are pretty much the most important. And you're going to see this on the analytics. I didn't put a picture of them, I should have, but there's a analytics tab for session. And you're going to see bars, like vertical bars, that go up and down depending on how much time players spent on the game. For Kigami, the drop off initially is huge, and then the the amount of players that stay for 90 minutes or more is pretty high as well. But we noticed that a lot of people drop off at the first few seconds, and it's probably because either the intro is too long. It's a calculated double knife edge, whatever, that I put on the game, because I didn't want players to read on the game to learn about the story. So I figured let's just make a cutscene at the first, which lasts around a minute or 2 minutes, giving a little bit of exposition, and then that's it. Players don't have to read about the game. But it was a 50-50. Some players skipped. I mean, some players left. They got bored. They don't want to go through 1 minute before actually playing the game. They want to jump in instantly and start moving around. So what I did was I still stayed true to the thing that I mentioned before, but I added a button for the players to skip the intro on the lobby. So that way they start the game, they see skip intro, they hit it, and then they don't have to watch the intro. They jump right into the game. And this definitely improved the retention rate of the sessions. And our average session time is around like 27 to 30 minutes, which is really high for a horror game. So you have all these analytics available whenever you push a game. I recommend you push the game, you go through the analytics, and based on that data, you optimize to improve those pain points. For example, if you have a low CTR, which is I think click through rate, which means the players that saw your game, the percentage of them that clicked it. So if you have low CTR, maybe you can try experimenting on a different thumbnail. Like different games, genres have different vibes with their thumbnails. Like certain ones are more successful than the others. So using all this data, you can update and optimize your game till eventually it clicks, and you kind of do this instinctively for your next games. This is for more technical people, but if you're good with programming and you kind of like understand systems, I recommend you build reusable frameworks to reduce iteration time between each game. Instead of building game specific devices, consider building a set of gameplay frameworks that you can use for other games. And this means that every single game you push, the iteration time between each game gets shorter and shorter. So I've been building this framework, I think before Kigami. So I have a game manager device, which is essentially a device I put on the world. And then I have all of the different managers for different systems in my game. So I don't put a lot of devices on the world for, like, let's say it's a device that manages items. I don't put a lot of devices. I just put one. And inside of that, I have a bunch of different components, kind of like Unreal. Let's say this is the game state of Unreal. And inside this game state, I have a bunch of game state components that each one kind of manages different things about the game. So, for example, this is the one on the Walking Dead game. So I have everything from loadouts, audio, flashlight, the walker for the zombies, inventory manager. So all this is built a little bit agnostically. Wow, I butchered that word. Between different games. So Kagami also uses this same framework with some less components, and this allows me to pretty much build games extremely quickly because I notice a lot of patterns between each game that I build. So if you're technical, make sure it follows the same thing as game development, like build reusable stuff in verse that you can copy paste into new projects and just speed development. It's gonna make things a lot more easier. And if you build stuff faster, you make stuff faster and you get paid faster. One thing with the thumbnails or updates is that when doing updates, incorporate a new thumbnail to maximize the clicks during discovery testing. I noticed that when you push an update, if you push it in a bi-weekly time, maybe a week or two, I prefer 2 weeks. Discovery tends to pick you up and put you on the new and updated and new. At least for this game, I got into the new first-person islands. For other type of games, you're gonna enter another one that shows updated games. So let's say you push a game and you have a big update planned. So whenever you have a big update planned, make sure you do a new thumbnail as well to match the update. I noticed that the first thumbnail, which is the one on the top left, that was the first thumbnail. And then we did the one under it because that the first one for some reason it got moderated and the game got taken down. So we kind of just zoomed into the face and that's it. But then we started doing the third one, which is the one on the top right. I found that that has a higher conversion rate. I think it's because it actually shows the face of the monster and it went through, but then it also it didn't get taken down. But whenever I did a new update, it prevented the new update from coming out because for some reason they allowed the thumbnail and then they say no, this thumbnail is not allowed. Then they tell you, okay, the thumbnail is not allowed because of fear and gore, but they never say exactly what specifics of the thumbnail. So it was pretty rough at that time because I had a really bad game breaking bug and I had to push an update. So I was blocked by the thumbnail. So what we did was we put the black bars on top of the eyes, and for some reason that went through. So that was kind of like our safe bet. But we pushed the thumbnails with each big update, and that led to higher CTR, which means more people are clicking the game, even if they played it before. If they see a new thumbnail, they're like, what happened? This I remember this game. This looks cool. Our strategy with our games is to focus on what we want to do and play, not follow trends. When starting out, it might be a bit overwhelming trying to figure out what type of game you want to create. So you can explore multiple projects and see what sticks, then develop a strategy and stay consistent with it. You can do anything that you want. I mean, having a strategy is very important for this because it's very overwhelming. For me personally, I'm doing this to improve my development skills at a rapid pace and gain mastery with Verse and Scene Graph to have thousands of hours of experience by the time UE6 comes out. They said that Verse and Scene Graph will eventually be on UE6. So being able to iterate on these tools and build stuff is going to make me a more competent developer once the tools comes out because I've already gone through multiple iteration cycles with them. So by the time UE6 comes out, like it's I have thousands of hours invested into Verse and Scene Graph, which is a big plus for me. But yeah, don't have your own strategy, stay consistent to it, and please try not to compare yourself with others. It's yeah, it happens to me. It's very discouraging that, for example, I'm gonna give you a proper example. So with Kigami, I pushed the game, and it went viral. It went well, and then it started dipping back into the hundreds, 50 players. It even dipped into 20 players. I'm like, okay, the game is done. And then I jump into Fortnite.gg. I look at other games. I saw a game, it was called Escape Guru, which is blatant copyright infringement. And the game, if you looked at that, I'm sorry, developer, it was just a sloppy horror game. and it had over 3,000 players constantly. And I look at that, I'm like, oh wow, this is very discouraging. But really, I mean, it's gonna happen to everyone. So try as much as possible not to compare yourself with the success of others. Just focus on your strategy, focus on what you want from the ecosystem, and focus on having fun and letting your creativity go wild without the constraints of regular game engine, instead of focusing on the amount of money that you can make and the success. Because thinking about money or discovery placements and then looking at, like, comparing your project with the projects of others is going to burn you out very quickly. And you can see this on Twitter a lot. A lot of people are constantly complaining about either their game is not getting picked up by discovery, they're not making as much as money, they're comparing their projects with others. It's a little bit rough, but that comes with a ecosystem that has low barriers of entry. Anyone can jump in and start making games, which is good and bad, because like it's kind of like when Blueprints came out on Unreal 4, you had a bunch of non-technical people, mostly artists, coming in and building very pretty games with gameplay instead of having to use programmers. And they were able to ship experiences like that. And then you have programmers building very complex systems and games and then not getting any traction because their game doesn't look as good. That's kind of like the same thing. So it can be very discouraging and empowering at the same time. So I just highly recommend you just have fun, stick to your strategy, and just keep making stuff, really, because eventually something that you make is going to click with players and it's going to begin a snowball effect, which is what happened with Kigami and what happened with our previous game. We shipped, I think it was 3 games initially. The first one actually got a lot of, like, it went to 100 players, which was very surprising. But it died down very quickly, and then we're like, why did the game die down? And we figure out months later that there was a bug in the game that when players died, they respawn without any weapons, and that didn't happen when we tested, so that it died. And then the other game wasn't as popular. We're like, okay, well, we're just gonna keep making games for like 5 or 10 people. But we just kept making games, we kept having fun, and we built Kagami, and Kagami blew up, and it kind of put us on the radar with other creators, with players. We have over, I think, 2,000 favorites on, and so we became like a creator. Let's just say we broke through the top 10% or something on income earners, which sounds like a lot, but really it's not that much. And yeah, just stick with it. And eventually you're going to do something that's going to click with a lot of players. And it's just going to keep going up because now players know who you are. Other creators know that you can build cool stuff, and Epic is going to notice. And Epic might give you opportunities for marketing or just talking with them about the tools. So who never knows? I mean, you could make it big, you could just make stuff and not do anything and just stay there. But really, just have fun. The tools are amazing, at least for me. Like, it's fun stuff compared to certain points of Unreal. Like, I still use Unreal 5. Unreal 5 is my main thing, but this is a side thing, UEFN, but it's becoming a little bit more than a side thing. And I've been talking very positively about UEFN, but obviously it does have its drawbacks, both on the whole ecosystem, the tools. For example, it reminds me of the early days of Unreal 4, where you pretty much build actors inside of the outliner. So, for example, since you don't have blueprints, you have to put devices, which are actors, in the world, and then you have to attach other actors or add components in the world itself, not on a blueprint, which is why scene graph is coming in and changing that. But it can be a little bit tedious. Some of the rules can be tedious. Uh, the amount of slop that gets released on a daily basis, there's like 300 maps being released every 24 hours. It's crazy. It has its pros and cons, but I'm pretty positive about the whole ecosystem because just thinking about the logistics behind all this, like taking a game that was first supposed to be a survival type game to a battle royale game, and then taking all that legacy code and stripping it out to build a UGC ecosystem within it. And getting all these features for free, it's crazy to think about all the engineering work that goes into this. So yes, it's good and bad, but I'm positive about the whole future of it. And I mean, it's part of it. Roblox has its things, Minecraft has its things. So every platform has its up and downs, but it's just part of it. At least for me, I really like it. It's fun, and I really want to keep making more stuff. And that's it. Any questions?
I've got a question. So where does the money come from? Are users paying to get into the game, or does Epic pay you? How does that work?
Epic pays you from the income they get from Fortnite. So they have this explained in a page. But to keep it short, the money that they make from Fortnite sales, from the V-Bucks, they allocate a percentage of that to pay all the creators. And the way that you get paid is based mostly on playtime and engagement. And there's a few other metrics. For example, if you manage to bring players outside of the Fortnite ecosystem, let's say new accounts or players that haven't played before, you probably get a little bit of a higher payout, but it's mostly based on the amount of players that play your game. You can go into Fortnite.gg and look up any game, and you can change the filter between a day, a month, a week, and you can see like the amount of money, average money. It's very accurate, by the way, mostly leaning on the high side. So let me go back to the one that we have with the money. So, for example, you have this range. Let's put March. That's the month that we made a lot of money, that we're going to be getting paid pretty soon. So it goes from 11K to 3.1K. So from my experience, it goes to the other side, to the right side of the range. So if you see 11K, it could be between 11, it could be between 10K to 13K that you get paid per month. So it really depends on the amount of players that play your game. If you have a high amount of players that stick with the game, they vote they vote high on the game, like the satisfaction, you get paid a lot. So that's why I mentioned that you want to make sure that the players stay inside of the island and give you playtime, because playtime, the higher the playtime, the more money you get from Epic every single month.
Thank you. That's that answers my question. I have another one if other people are okay with that.
Sure, sure. Go ahead.
So it's a long shot. I don't know if you'd know this, but do you happen to know um, who retains if you make a game like you did, and you have some original IP that you put into that? Who owns that? Do you own it? Does Epic own it? Are they licensing it from you? Do you happen to know how that works?
That's a good question. So you definitely own it. It's your IP. I think one of the parts of the TOS is that whenever you submit something, you you confirm that you are the original author of that IP. And yeah, Epic is simply just paying you for the game. They don't own it. And also, when it comes to payments, you get paid as a contractor. So 1099.
Okay, so I guess you could imagine this like you write a TV show and Epic is like the streaming service or something that's bringing that to people.
Correct. And they have a whole legal procedure for IP infringements. Like they have DMCA's. If you are the original IP owner of a certain IP and then someone is using it from you inside of the ecosystem without your permission, you can file a DMCA. But when you ship something, it's your IP, pretty much.
I had a couple of questions. Thanks so much for the presentation. So as far as like the marketing, do you use any separate marketing channels? Are you on like Twitter promoting your game, or are you just relying on being found inside Fortnite?
Oh, that reminded me. I forgot to put something like that on the on the presentation. So yes, I do use marketing. So I'm I'm well connected with some extremely talented Gen Z TikTok content creators, they have the magic sauce in making very like short form content about Fortnite games that go viral. So you can rely entirely on discovery for your games, but it's not like once discovery takes you out, if you don't have an audience outside of that, it's going to die down completely. So what I recommend is if you're serious about a project and you have a marketing budget, just go on Twitter and look for these guys. You'll see them around. They you can commission, let's say, 7 videos or 10 videos for $500. So it really depends on the person. And then you pay them, and they will make a account on your behalf on TikTok, on YouTube, different social media platforms, and they're gonna build. Each one has their own strategy. But if you look at most of the videos on TikTok about Fortnite maps, they kind of follow the same pattern. So they'll make videos that go viral, and that's kind of how you start building your audience outside of discovery. Like you need marketing. Without marketing, unless you like build something extremely viral and the marketing begins from Fortnite to outside, it's very hard to move forward and build an audience. So I highly recommend it. Just find these kids, pay them, and they'll make videos about your game. For example, I have a few ones on TikTok that one guy made. He's really talented. And he has a specific style that caters to virality. So he knows what music to put on the background, what text to use, the font, all that. And one of the videos got around 600,000 or more views. And a lot of the videos on TikTok got high views on YouTube as well. So yes, you do need marketing. So it's kind of the same thing as games, but it mostly comes from short form content, not like paying like a website or someone to make an article about you or ads. It's mostly just viral content on social media.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to know who this person is if you're willing to share that. If not, I totally understand. So I'm not gonna, that's up to you if you want to share that. But I did have one other question. As far as like the custom devices, are those made in C++, or can you make them in Blueprints, or how are those made for the game? Do you make them in UE5 and then import them into UEFN, or how does that work?
Right. So I'll mention the names of the guys. So I worked with Cyro and I worked with Wavy. Wavy's the one making me the videos as of currently. It's really good. But between that circle, like once you get into the Fort UEFN Cool Kids Club, where the like the inner circle is, you're gonna notice who makes what, and it will be easy to find these creators. But you can find them easily on Twitter. With the devices, it uses Verse. So let's see. Uh, so with the devices, you make them on Verse. So for example, let's see. Okay, so if you remember from the presentation, I had something called Game Manager. This is the Game Manager right here. It's built entirely in Verse. And then similar to Blueprints on Unreal, you have the panels. I'm sorry if the text is too small, but you kind of have like the details panel on the right side where you can like play around with exposed variables. And it follows a similar paradigm to Unreal. So let's look for the Game Manager. And let's go up to the Game Manager device. So you can, for example, in UE5, you have the U property, and you can put edit default only or something like that. So in here you have editable, but it follows kind of the same thing as the Unreal Engine, like how you build things, how you expose them to the editor, but you use Verse. And Verse, it's a bit weird at first, and you kind of like, well, why is everything either a constant or non-mutable? Why do I have to do things this way? What's a failure context? It's a lot of weird things about verse initially, but once you jump into it and give it some time, everything makes sense at the end, and you're gonna find that a lot of things are really easy to make and wrap your head around, especially asynchronous things. For example, let's say you're building timers, like you can build an entire game loop. Like let's say you're doing a race game or like an objective or some gameplay loop. You can build all that in a single function by using their time concurrency. So it's very flexible, but it's a little bit tedious at first. But everything is built with Verse. Fortnite does give you a lot of devices that are already pre-built, and you're going to be using a lot of them because it's kind of how they expose Fortnite logic. They don't give you access to the source code. They simply give you devices with pre-built stuff in them, and you can use the properties to like pick them. For example, I have a bunch of templates built here for weapons and loot spawners. Like all these are different loots that you can pick up on the game. So I kind of like build a master, like the base class, which I then use this to copy paste into the entire map. So all this you kind of like you have your little workstation on the world. So let's say, so example here we have the playable world, but then in a spot on the world you kind of have like a workstation where you put all your devices. That's kind of the cons that I mentioned before. Like it's a little bit tedious because you have to put everything here and like try to keep track of everything. Let's say a good example is, let's say you have the looting stuff that I mentioned, all these loot items like ammo stuff. Let's say you touch this and you get ammo, and you put a lot of the, for example, the mesh, the buttons and all that, you put them inside of the actor. Like you just throw it, kind of like the old days of UE4. You build everything inside of the outline, inside of the world. And let's say you have like 100 of these instances on the world, and then, oh crap, there's a bug or you have to replace something. Now you got to go through every single one and replace them. It's tedious, but that's kind of why you kind of have to build devices like this, and then from here you copy paste and you make sure that it's not going to break. But yeah, everything is entirely verse and devices of UEFN. You can't use blueprints. You can't use C++. The blueprints here, they are a little bit weird. Well, not weird. They just simply don't have the code. So for example, let me open this helicopter. So I have an extraction helicopter in the Walking Dead game. So I built I built a collision with cubes because skeletal meshes don't give you access to the physics. So I built all the collision with invisible cubes. But as you can see, you don't have the event graph. You don't have like anything for code. It's simply just a container where you can put components without any logic in them. You get access to a lot of things from Unreal, like instant static meshes, uh, even grooms that support it. But apart from that, you can't code like you code it in Unreal. You have to use Verse and the devices.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Ready?
I have a question.
Sure.
How conducive is UEFN to creating single player games? Meaning, like, is it really meant for multiplayer? Do I have to fight the system if I just want to make a single player experience?
So you can make pretty much anything you want to make, which is the cool part of it. Like I mentioned in the talk, the concept of networking of multiplayer is abstracted away. There's no, if you worked with networking stuff in Unreal, you kind of have like authority, you have networking roles. All that doesn't exist here. The way that you handle that is based on the agent, let's say the actor, and you use that to detect the players. So there's no networking sense here. It's all abstracted away. And when it comes to building single player games, you can do single player games extremely easy. One of them on our presentation is a visual novel. It's around, all these are multiplayer games, but then this one right here is not multiplayer. It's entirely single player. But like I mentioned, there's no concept of networking here. So for example, you can build this for a single player and then increase the player count to 2, and now 2 players can play the game without any explicit networking code or anything. So yes, you can make pretty much anything that you can think of in UEFN. But the biggest issue would be like the player base. Like I mentioned earlier, also on the presentation, this ecosystem already had Fortnite for many years. It's not like Roblox, where Roblox is not really a game that you play, it's a platform that people make games. In here, you have Fortnite, so there's already like a bias towards Fortnite type experiences being more popular. And therefore, anything that resembles that plays like Fortnite, it will probably be more popular with the player base. So if you build like this visual novel, it will be really cool. It will be innovative. Epic might even pick it up, but when it comes to getting players, it will be very tricky. But with this, you can make pretty much anything that you can. It's kind of like Unreal, pretty much. If you know how to use Verse, you can build any type of experience. I've seen people build spaceship games with simulating physics where there's no physics, and they kind of like attach spaceships to the characters, and then they disable the characters and they simply use a little bit of math to simulate the physics on the ship. So any type of experience that you can think of, you can probably build it in UEFN. Probably a lot more easier than UE5, but then who's gonna play it? That's the tricky part.
And well, oh, what about size? You mentioned there was some kind of size limit. So if you want to build a really large, say, single player, is there like a limit to that?
Yes. So if you go into your editor, there's gonna be something called project size.
Mhm.
It's gonna be probably on the top left, whatever, of here. So you have a maximum amount of, oh, they increased it. So right now it's at, oh, no, my bad. I was looking at the wrong thing. So download size. So you want to make sure that your download size is 400 megabytes or less. And as you can notice, textures usually take up most of the size. So this is mostly for the assets that you bring in. It doesn't count the Fortnite stuff. The Fortnite stuff is counted with memory, which is above. It's not a representation of actual like RAM. It's kind of like a calculation they do, but you can think of it as server CPU or server RAM. So if you're building something very custom, you gotta be very careful with your project size. And usually between the textures and the sound and meshes, that's where most of the size is gonna come from. For example, this project is pretty low at the moment because we use a lot of Fortnite content. But for the horror game, since it was entirely built with no Fortnite stuff, we had to make like it was kind of like building a game for, let's say, PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 or mobile. Like you have to
Mhm.
be very careful of everything that you put into the project and make sure that all the texture sizes are as low as possible. Yeah, a a thing that I follow is that once I import something from Unreal 5, I instantly cut the texture size to 2K on everything. If it's a project that there's gonna be a lot of things, then I put them to 1K. But if there's not gonna be many things, custom things, I usually leave them at 2K. And then for the sound waves, make sure the sound is not too long. And for example, you can also reduce the bit rate of the audio or the sample rate to
Mhm.
reduce the size. For the meshes, make sure you trim as much triangles from them as possible, kind of like LOD. Make sure you do the LOD before you import them into the engine, because it's something I learned recently. This helicopter right here, the extraction helicopter, this guy shot up my my project size to like 20 something percent, and it has around 11 megabytes, and I that's with the LODs removed. When I added LODs, it increased to like 20 or something, or even more. So you want to make sure that every asset that you put here, you trim it as much as possible to ensure you have a lot of project size. The big challenge right now with this project is we have to optimize the memory, because we're way above the memory rate.
Mm.
So if we move into the map, our memory rate is going to start increasing. Oh, it actually went down. That's cool. So we only have like 10K memory to remove to get within the range. But yeah, just play around with the sizes. Try to keep the project as low as possible, between 400 megabytes and less. And keep in mind that console players might not have good performance for certain things. So if you can pre-optimize things even further, that's going to be really good for them.
Hmm. Okay, cool. And then they have those custom Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle and Walking Dead packs, right? That is the world's that, and that doesn't count towards the 400, right? That's part
Nope.
of UEFN.
Yeah, everything that Epic already includes in UEFN, it doesn't count as part of the project size.
And then
Everything,
you can't use like both Ninja Turtle and Walking Dead, right? It has to be one or the other.
yeah. So
Okay.
with the IP, it's handled differently because you have to. It's kind of like a sample game in Unreal 5. So let's say you want to make a Ninja Turtle game, you can't just open the standard project and then just pick the assets. You have to open the sample game, like the IP
Yeah.
related game,
Mhm.
and then from there you get access to those specific assets, and they're only for that specific project. So
Yeah.
if you
Okay.
export them out and put them into regular Fortnite, you're gonna get removed. So they give you a lot of things on the Walking Dead stuff, mostly just this prison and the zombies and a few VFX, UI, weapons. But they're gonna be coming out with more. I think they're going to be doing something with Star Wars pretty soon,
Mm.
and I believe that's the future of the whole collab thing with Epic. They're kind of building this metaverse thing where they allow IPs to come in and let players build IP supported things,
Yeah.
experiences, and you're not going to get IP infringement. But you have to pay a percentage of your earnings to them in order to use it. So I
Right.
think Ninja Turtles is around, I think, between 12 or 18%, and The Walking Dead is around 8%. So whenever you get payouts, let's say you made $10,000, you're going to take 8% of those before they give it to you. And that's kind of the price you pay for the IP. But you can build anything within that IP, which is really cool. Which is what I like about this project, is that we're building kind of like a Left 4 Dead, No More Room in Hell type of experience, where this is essentially a map within the game itself. So we have
Okay.
this map, the prison map, and let's say we build like 4 or 5 different scenarios where it changes the different missions, and like it changes the experience. But let's say this becomes popular, then we copy paste the code and we build a new project and we build a new map with the same code, and we essentially have a new map of the same game, and that's supported by Epic. So that's kind of like the thing that we're doing with this. Like it's pretty cool building something Walking Dead related without getting IP infringement.
Yeah, that's so you just answered my question also about I was thinking about this horror Walking Dead. So you guys are doing that because you're like basically a horror studio, right? So you're using this to build your next experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So if you want to do that, or if you're like Ninja Turtles studio type action hero stuff, you probably want to do that or something. Okay.
Yeah, I think they're doing that, or maybe it's just one, but I think someone, or maybe it's one of the official games, they build like the side scroller Ninja Turtle arcade game, like from the 90s, that you kind of move side scrolling and you beat up the ninjas and then you fight bosses. So you could probably build something like that and then build multiple maps. So you go through, you play their entire catalog of maps, and instead of them being a specific game, it's essentially the same game split between multiple maps. That's a
Hmm.
good way to make like some sort of franchise. That's kind of what we're doing with this, while we're building the next horror game, the sequel of Kagami, because we're moving forward with that, and we're following the same ethos pretty much, which is we have the majority of the code and
Uh-huh.
like the framework already built out, so we just need to build a new map and then
Yeah.
build a few unique mechanics, and then maybe we can bring those mechanics back into the first game. And then we just kind of keep copy pasting the same thing and building different experiences.
Cool. That's really smart. It's awesome. Yeah, I just have one more question. Sorry, just you got me
Go ahead.
thinking. So you were mentioning the other guy that was building the Ninja Turtle experience, but so I tried to do that, right? But then my main character is always the Fortnite character because you can change your character. You have to pay to get the Ninja Turtle characters in Fortnite. So is there a way to like force your character to be the one that you want them to experience, or is that just an opening that is to be filled with the player, what of their choosing, what character they want?
So they have a big thing with player expression in Fortnite. So
Yeah.
the skins themselves, the character that you play, if you want to be a Ninja Turtle, you have to buy that skin. So you don't
Yeah,
get
and
access to it whenever you do a Ninja Turtle experience. But you have access to devices which allow you to pick skins, and
mhm,
they're fully animated. So if you're technically savvy, you can essentially replace your character with a custom character. It's not gonna look good because you don't have like animation blending. You kind of have to
yeah,
play animations raw, but you can probably replace and do something similar. But yeah, let's say for example, I'm doing the Walking Dead thing,
mhm,
and I'm currently Rick Grimes, and my wife was playing as Michonne. That is not provided to us. We simply bought the skins.
yeah. Okay, and then so players, they don't get forced by the game developer to use these. They have that choice. So
Mhm.
you're, yeah, okay. See that, man? I wish there's a way to force them.
That's part of the metaverse thing because you enter a game and you can play a spooky horror game and your buddies, you have Goku, you have Vegeta, you have Master Chief, and then you have the Doomslayer all on the same team, and then you're all doing all these wacky ass emotes. That's kind of like the charm of Fortnite and the player expression. I see that a lot on all the videos of Kigami
Mhm,
where players are essentially playing a bunch of different wacky characters that are juxtaposed from the entire environment, and they're
yeah,
having the ring girl chasing them, and they're running around and doing all these emotes and like doing the memes and dances, and yeah, that's kind of part of the charm. But they don't give you skins for specific games or experiences. You have to buy them themselves, or you can just replace your character entirely. Let's say you're building a game about, I don't know, slimes, and you
hmm.
can hide your character and attach a slime mesh, and now you're a slime. You can't see your character.
And that would count towards your 400 megabytes, right? Because it's
Yes,
custom.
the
Yeah.
mesh and all that, everything that you import into the engine, that's not part of these folders, the Epic, the Fortnite. So if it's not here, it's going to count to project size because the assets are already cooked into the game itself. So you
Mm,
don't have to like add them into the pack chunk or the game file. Anything
yeah.
that you import yourself manually, that gets cooked into the game. Because they do kind of like this uses the gameplay features from Unreal 5. It's like a way of building games with like instead of building the game entirely in a single project, you build a you build your game in plugins, and then these plugins
Mm,
get loaded into the main game dynamically. So Fortnite Creative is essentially that. You got
uh-huh.
Fortnite, and then all these experiences we're building, we are building essentially plugins for Unreal 5 that get sent to the server to their like CDN
Mm,
as zip files, and then that gets unpacked over there, and that gets fed into the Unreal game as a pack file, as a plugin, pretty much. And that's how this whole thing works.
I see. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much for answering all my questions.
Yeah, definitely. If there's no more questions, we're gonna do a little quick rundown of our new Walking Dead game. It's gonna be pretty quick,
I do
just
have
so
a
you can
quick
see.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, as far as the gameplay goes, if you use the Fortnite character as is, right? Do you control the movement of that Fortnite character, or you're just creating an experience for that Fortnite character? In other words, say that you're making a game that the player can't jump, but we all know the Fortnite character can jump. Do you control that experience, or do you just have to have a game that can allow jumping?
Yeah, you can fully control how the controls and the camera operate in Fortnite, and you can even override the inputs. So for example, you can build a side scroller game where the character only moves in 2 axes or just up. If you don't want players to jump, you can remove that. You have a lot of control and flexibility over the regular Fortnite like controls. But
Okay.
you can't well, I mean you can do a lot of crazy stuff. I haven't really seen something that I was like, okay, I can't do this. If you can possibly think of it, you can possibly build something very custom, but you have a limited amount of options or exposed variables from the regular Fortnite stuff that you can take advantage of. It's a lot for the majority of experiences you can build. But yeah, I mean, if you can think of it, just explore it a little bit and probably you'll find a way to do something very cool. So with this game, it's still in development. Like most of the bare bones stuff is already implemented. We want to ship this by May 16, so it's kind of like we're crunching. We have the majority of things already implemented. We just need to add polish and like iterate through it to see what's up. So think of this as a Left 4 Dead type No More Room in Hell experience, 4 players, and you repeat the same map, fighting zombies, doing objectives, and then you have a progression that every time you level up, you deal more damage, you get access to new weapons, but it's kind of like the core experience. So we're gonna start the mission right now. Like I said, all this is work in progress. There's supposed to be like a menu, UI menu that allows you to choose what type of mission you want to play. Right now, the only mission is the hospital one. And let's see if nothing breaks. So you can see on the left side, the objectives, all that is entirely custom. And we're just gonna speed run through the whole thing just so we can show you the gameplay in the shortest amount possible. So it looks like Resident Evil. We move the camera very close to give that Resident Evil type feel. You can also play it in first person, which is supported. When you kill zombies, you get coins, which you can use to mod your weapons. And possibly other things. I want to add like the shop guy from Resident Evil 4, the stranger. You can buy ammo from him. There's loot on the map. You can scavenge and loot ammo and supplies and things like that. Okay, she found the other objective. Let me increase the volume just a little bit. Hopefully it's not that loud. But we try to make this as creepy as possible with a unique soundscape, with the zombies going around. The post-processing is entirely custom. Now we're in a safe room, like Back 4 Blood, Left 4 Dead. Every time you do a main mission, you get access to a safe room where you can loot weapons. And you can kind of like take a break from the zombies. They're going to be standing outside. You got to make sure that you close the door or else they're going to get in. You're going to loot the remaining bullets. Oh. We have a dynamic first person and third person. So like I mentioned before, there's first person, but I want to make sure that third person, you can also go into first person. So you have this Resident Evil look and then you aim and you're in first person.
And you can
Yeah, go ahead.
You can use custom assets for like the UI, like the font on the numbers and stuff.
Correct. So the UI on the left, the UI on the bottom, it's entirely custom. I built that with a widget inside of Unreal. So you can build widgets, but you have to use the widgets with their devices, which is something I learned recently. For Kagami, we did all the UI on Burst. You can build UI straight on code, but you don't have essentially UMG access. You're just building with bare bones UI stuff. But I found out that we can build the UI on widgets and use something called model view model. I think it's on Unreal as well. It's a plugin. She's disabling the alarms. There's no VFX or anything for the alarms. All the objectives, they're like the smallest amount possible so we can speed up through the game very quickly. Oh, I think she's down. Yeah, she's down. I'm gonna take her loot. So with the widgets, you have to route them through devices with the model view model. They give you like a preset of variables that you can bind. So instead of being able to just bind variables, you can use the model view model to bind them through there. And that's kind of how it works. Oh, activated debug mode. So that's kind of how you do the custom UI. So for example, you can't just do the health or the equipment and just bind custom variables to them. No, you have to make sure it fits a device. So then you can bind them to that. It's a bit tricky, but just look up model view model on Unreal 5. I think it's their new way of handling UMG binding. It's pretty cool.
Okay, thank you.
So we found the virus sample. This mission is essentially you gotta go into the prison. You gotta go into the prison and do some objectives, and then you gotta find virus samples. And once you're done, you have to call for extraction. So all the objectives that we did, all of them can get randomized, different randomized locations. But like I mentioned before, for this example, we are just reducing the amount of things you need to do for an objective by like just do one thing, and that's it, just to speed through. So now we gotta find a radio on the cafeteria to do an extraction. And the radio can spawn on a bunch of different randomized locations. So right now it's cafeteria. Another game, it could be block A, it could be block B, block C. So every game kind of has its own different variation. And we missed the golden supply room, so we're just going to go through to the blue one. So every time you complete a main mission, you unlock the supply rooms, but then the loot, the weapons inside of the supply rooms, they increase their level depending on the objective. So the further you go into the mission, the better weapons that you get, to kind of give the player like a cool power progression within the Fortnite ecosystem. And all these weapons are completely randomized, which is the cool thing. So we got this light machine gun. You can get explosives down here. We can get meds. So all this is built towards maximum replayability. And the more that you play the game, you keep leveling up. You see the experience below. Now I have 4% bonus damage, and it goes all the way to level 50 with 100% bonus damage. Which, all these features keep players engaged in the game, which is what you want. So with the zombies, we build a grid system where the whole world is split into cubes. And when you're moving around, you're activating and deactivating the zombie spawners based on the position that you are inside of the, let's say, the grid. So this way, the game is always constantly throwing you zombies and removing zombies from non-relevant areas. Because if not, you're going to spawn 74 zombies, and then the world is not going to keep spawning more. So you're going to enter a place with a bunch of zombies, and then the entire map is kind of like empty because you've reached the limit. We kind of figure out a way around that. So now we got to find the radio for the extraction. And it spawns in the cafeteria, and I think it should. Okay, it's there. We gotta find a way around that. I think it's through here. Got a few zombies over there. So I'm going to go straight into the extraction. Ow. So now we triggered the extraction. Now that triggered a whole cinematic sequence with sequencer that it has a helicopter flying into the level to a specific place. So if you played No More Room in Hell, it's very similar. And now we gotta go to the extraction point and wait for the extraction to come. And like I mentioned previously, there's a lot of missing polish on the game, like voiceovers, more UI stuff. A few mission types are also missing. Oof. She's already up there. For me, gotta kill all the zombies. So the game right now is a little bit easy. By design, we want to make sure that we reduce as much friction as possible because most of the people playing this game are going to be kids. So yeah, I wanted to make it a little bit harder, but at the same time, I want to make sure that kids enjoy the game and kind of like the power progression. They don't feel too stressed out. So it's kind of like a zombie shooting game for kids. And the helicopter's almost there. I think you can see it. Yeah, it's coming right there. So that is, like I mentioned, it's a cinematic that is playing right now on the server that every other player sees. That it's replicated properly. So everyone is seeing the exact same thing. The animation, I mean, the helicopter is not fully animated. I just kind of like blocked out the frames. So I know exactly in 2 minutes the helicopter is going to be here. So it's missing the rotor moving around, like the actual physics. It's just following a spline. But you can hear the sound. And then it's going to park. And now we can go in. And the cool thing is we can actually go into the helicopter. And the helicopter moves with us. So we're moving with the helicopter, and then we extract it, and that's kind of the core gameplay loop of the game. Now, once it finishes, we go back to the lobby, and then we repeat. So that's kind of it. Obviously, it's missing like more things, but with this framework, we can keep playing the game and iterating on the same idea and polishing it while we add new VFX, voiceovers, and just making the game a little bit more juicy. But yeah, this is kind of like our current experience that we're working on that we want to ship by May 16, hopefully. It's been very tight and a lot of crunch. But the first ones that ship Walking Dead games are probably going to take most of the cake. So we want to make sure that we're first in the market. And it's a really cool experience. I mean, when you're with 4 buddies, you come home from work, you want to jump in and just mindlessly shoot zombies and just do simple objectives. And then every single session, you get stronger and you get access to more loot. That's kind of the type of vibe that we're going for with this game. And yeah, that's our new Walking Dead game in development.
Wonderful. Yeah, that looks great. I noticed that the flashlight seems to be moving at like a lower frame rate than the rest of the game. Is that due to a technical limitation in UEFN?
Yes. So the looping, well, the movement is done at 30 frames. So the flashlight is essentially, there's 2 parts to it. It updates at 30 frames per second, and then you have to wait for the server to replicate it because there's no client code on this. So, for example, if you sprint, you'll probably see the shadow clipping through. That's because you're moving faster than the server can update it. And you can't attach things in UEFN. That's a big I have to move them like every frame. That's the thing. So that's why it looks choppy. It's not like attached to the head bone like you would do in Unreal.
Right. Yeah. You can't just like, it's not, you don't have full access to blueprints, I guess. So you can't just like attach a spring arm and then a light source and then have it follow the camera movement like you normally would.
Nope. You could probably do something hacky with control rig. I've heard of people doing like attachment related things with control rig, but I'm not too familiar with that yet. But yeah, that's one of the big limitations. All the code is entirely server sided. It doesn't execute on, I think, on the clients. So any code that you do, it has to run on the server, and then you can see the results on it. So if you're lagging and you have this flashlight and you're like 200 milliseconds of ping, it's going to lag behind your character. It's gonna happen like this, but probably a lot worse.
Oh, interesting. Are there any other like major limitations to be aware of for UE5 developers, like big features that are big in UE5, like Nanite, for example, that you don't have access to in UEFN?
So you have access to Nanite. Anything like visual related that doesn't have code, pretty much. Niagara, Nanite, Lumen, you have access to Lumen. You can't bake lights because obviously that would increase the project size. But you have a lot of access to a lot of things from Unreal, mostly on the visual side. The big problem is the fact that you can't run blueprint code. So any client-side code, let's say, for example, the UI stuff that I was mentioning, all that runs through view models. You can't just bind the functions and get the player health or get the objectives. All that is entirely, like, I'll give you a good example of that. So let me look at level 1. So you're going to look at this and you're going to be like, wow, this is very tedious. So there's the level widget that we had before. Okay, cool. So we don't have a progress bar. We have a material with like progress integrated into it. And then, so how do we get the level? How do we get the experience? How do we get all that? You're thinking, well, I just built something in Unreal, like a component, and build some variables and then tell the UI about them. You can't do that here. So what we do is we route the experience, the level, all that, we route them through the device called stat creator, which is these devices right here. For example, this one is the level. This one is currency, which is not yet implemented, and extractions. So for level, we have max level 150 and then max value 1,000. So you need 1,000 experience to level up, and then each level increases that by a multiplier. So how do we get that? Like, how do we have persistence? So there's two parts. There's the actual verse code with persistence. There's a whole topic on this. Like, we have the player data custom class with all the variables that we want to persist between each session, kind of like a backend where you save and load data. And then this plugs into the device, and then the device can then be read from the widget using the view model. So the view model, you add the view model, and then that gives you access to specific things about the device, which are already predefined. For example, the level, the max level, the name, the percentage. And then, which comes the tricky part, is then you have to bind those values with the widget elements. So in here, you can see that I'm binding the text, the level to the text, the target value, all that. And then the worst part is, so how do we do the bonus damage? Like, how do we show the player the bonus damage? So look at all. So I'm not sure if it looks well from the resolution, but let's say from here where the blue thing is all the way down, for each level, I'm manually typing the text of the bonus damage. So every level increases the bonus damage by 2%. So I have to do that for 50 levels. And then, so how do you increase the bonus damage? Well, I think I found a better way to do that. But the method that I went through is that I put 50 damage amplifiers on the other side of the map, and each one has the specific multiplier. So I told ChatGPT, so I have 50 levels. I want the player to have 2%, like calculate the amount per level. And it gave me the percentage or the multiplier. And then every single device, I put that. So that's the very tedious things of UEFN. Like, certain things are just going to be tedious like this. And you look at this and you're like, well, in Unreal, I can just put a value and then read from a data asset or a data table, and that's it. No, here you have to put everything on the world and then adjust the like the values and all that, and then make sure on the widget, make sure that you can route your custom code through a device that gives you the properties that you need to display them to the player. And that's kind of how I figure things out. It's very hacky to a certain degree, but that's where scene graph comes in. With scene graph, think of it as blueprints. Blueprint in UEFN. Under the hood, you have it's essentially ECS, entity component system. So it's a very lightweight system. It's very cool to use, and that's going to give us finally a blueprint type workflow where you can build. Oh, I have this enabled. Cool. So let's say, let me just go to blueprint. So I want to build a helicopter or some code related thing. So I just build a prefab, which is think of it as a blueprint, but it's more empty. It doesn't have UObject. It doesn't have like all the baggage from all those actor UObject type classes. You get like a very extremely lightweight class based on ECS, and you have this entity right here. And then let's say you want to add a mesh. I have a static mesh, I think. So, yeah, so you can forget how you do static meshes and all that. I think you have to select them. Oh, okay, you do it right here. Yeah, so it's kind of weird at first. You can replace the mesh that you put with a mesh, but it doesn't give you like copy paste or something like that. And then you add the components manually. So you want this mesh to have a transform. Well, the transform, you add it manually through here, and then you keep adding more components. But it's very lightweight. And then all these components, you can write code on them on Verse. So you have the blueprint workflow, and you can finally like not have this monstrosity where you're placing a bunch of devices on the world and then building more components on top of them, which is extremely tedious. And whenever you have to revert something, you have to do it for every single thing. If you probably made a mistake with meshes or something like that. So that's kind of the big thing about UEFN compared to UE5 is that type of workflow that me as a Unreal developer since UDK, it's like learning how to use UE4 for the first time and then just doing everything on the outliner.
But they intend with scene graph, if I'm not mistaken, they intend to add the functionality whereby you can make a prefab, and when you make a change to it, it will update all of the instances in the level, right?
Yes, correct. And
But-
you can
but-
also build new variations inside of like you can drop this entity right here, the cube. I can't see the cube. I think I need to build it. So yeah, they do want, and they're gonna do that functionality. But at the same time, you have this right here, and then from here you can keep adding more components, and then those components are going to be unique per instance. So you can kind of like build more stuff on top of it. But yeah, that's kind of the thing that they're wanting to do.
But they haven't done it yet.
No, they keep pushing the the release date for Scene Graph. They said that it was going to be done by I think Q1, 2000, like this year. And before that, I think it was delayed 2 times or more. I mean, I understand it's a huge system going from like inheritance, going from UObject to actor to this completely different workflow with ECS. I'm sure there's just a lot of complexities with the technical side. And then when you add the metaverse thing and like the future that they want to do with this system, I fully understand. And yeah, you can play around with it. You have access to everything, but you can't ship projects with it yet. So I was planning on building a new horror game with Scene Graph that it was kind of like a like Phasmophobia or like these type of multiplayer horror games where they're very dynamic, and it included procedural generation because we managed to build procedurally generated levels with Scene Graph. You can build a bunch of prefabs and then just stitch them together with verse code. So it's a promising future, and we're almost there. But until then, you gotta keep ham fisting devices into each other and hoping it works.
So hold on. You can try Scene Graph now already, but you can't actually ship it in a UEFN game.
Correct. So you can
Okay.
add it. You have access to the entire source code. You can essentially do anything with what they have public right now, but you can't put it you can ship it. But you can probably run a playtest and get people involved. So you can play the game, but you just can't put it on the public.
Okay. Do you have to build it from source if you want to try out Scene Graph, or is that just in an experimental feature section or something?
Oh, you just press, I think you don't have to. That's another cool thing. You don't have to build the engine from source. You simply download their binary and you have access to everything. That's another cool thing about UEFN, because I mean, I'm pro source. Like that's how I do it. I've been doing it since UE4, but using binary and not having to worry about that, that's cool. So for example, you want to use Scene Graph, you go to the project settings, which is probably the same place where UE5 is, and you go down and you're going to see the experimental access, and you turn this on with the Scene Graph system, and that's going to give you access to the Scene Graph, and then you can build anything with that. It's really cool. I mean, I tried out. It's essentially blueprints pretty much, but you have to build everything from scratch. Like you don't have a bunch of helper functions. You have maybe a component and you have a few things with the entities, but it's a blank slate, and it has a cool event system inside of it. So you can send events, kind of like a message framework within entities. So it's pretty cool tech. I mean, I can't wait for this to come to Unreal 6. Hopefully, it comes before, because it's going to revolutionize how at least UE5 developers work. Between this and Verse, it's going to be pretty cool. Verse, at least for me, I don't want to deal with blueprints. It's cool, but I prefer text, to be completely honest, especially when things start to grow. Like managing text for me is better on my brain. So that coupled with Scene Graph, it's going to be godsend. So that's why I'm putting all these hours here, so I can get very proficient with that by the time it comes into Unreal.
Well, we'll all be looking to you for help then when we get stuck.
Yeah, sure thing.
And for those of you who are interested, there's a talk on YouTube from one of the previous Unreal Fests where the guys at Epic talk about all about Scene Graph, like from a conceptual perspective, how it works, what the whole point is, and like what you can do with it, and sort of talking about like the future. I think they've basically said that they're using UEFN as the laboratory, the test bed for Verse, and once Scene Graph, once it ships in UEFN and feels good there, then they're going to port it over to Unreal Engine, like 5 proper. I don't know if they're actually going to put it in 5 before 6, but I know that Tim Sweeney has said basically once we get Verse and Scene Graph in Unreal, then the number goes up to 6 basically.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing, and it touches on one of the first points that I mentioned with Scene Graph and Verse. First thing you're gonna look at is why Verse is like this. Like what it's weird. Like coming from C languages into this, it's gonna feel very weird. How certain things are done, but they explain it very thoroughly. Like this is gonna be bigger than just like Fortnite and Unreal. They're thinking like bigger terms, metaverse stuff. So they have to build a language that it follows a certain set of rules and ways of doing things. So it's going to be pretty cool. I mean, Tim is a beast. I mean, he built Unreal and he's doing all this. So anything he does, it will eventually be amazing. I've been preaching UEFN to U5 developers for a while. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to preach a little bit more. Like it's a great fun thing to do. It's like I mentioned, it's a hobby for me. My main thing is always going to be like the main Unreal Engine thing, but I never really had the modding or UGC experience before getting into game development. So going backwards, jumping into game development and then kind of like a modding experience, it's pretty fun. So I highly recommend it, and it will get really big.
Well, thank you again for giving the presentation. This was great, and thanks to everyone who came out.
Alrighty, thank you guys.